As we enter into our time for our message, let us pray. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable and pleasing to you, God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So in preparation for our message today, just thinking about Advent and thinking about this theme about hope, I kind of shared with you some questions I've been pondering. First of all, what is your current relationship to hope? How might hope be an invitation to the new things in life, a new creation, new ways of being? And can hope be used to uphold the status quo? Can the powers that be actually co-opt hope? These are some things I've been thinking about lately, especially as we enter the season of Advent, this season of anticipation, this season of expectancy. Engaging in anticipation, being present and in anticipation means the hope for something. You're waiting for something. The expectation of something, even if it's not clear what that image of that expectation is. Yeah. I struggle with hope, and I just wanted y'all to sort of check in with yourselves about where you're at with hope, because I think sometimes, I mean, for myself, I need to check in about my thoughts around these 4 things that we raise every Advent: hope, peace, love, joy. You know, do we really take the time to think about what that is for us, what hope has been for us throughout the year, and what we're hoping for in the next year? I think for me, because of sometimes it being sort of oversimplified, hope has kind of lost its meaning to me. In this season where I am, it's a little bit diluted, or let me just say, I'm a little bit suspicious when I see the word hope or I hear hope being talked about. When I started out with the Philippine Solidarity Task Force, others from the US I was traveling with were really on this slogan of giving hope to the hopeless. And it sort of parallels with this idea of giving voice to the voiceless, right? But I think hope is like a different thing. You're talking about hope. You're not just talking about voice, right? In our ministry of presence and solidarity with the task force, there were folks who really upheld this framework of giving hope to the hopeless. And it felt patronizing to me in a way, like, who are we to bring hope anywhere? It felt a little bit colonial. It felt a little bit too much top down. I have something you do not have, you know, and it also felt really untrue. I didn't feel like we were giving hope to the hopeless. So after years of bringing delegates from the US on those trips to the Philippines, I found that folks from the US who have means, who have privilege, who have more resources, don't actually have hope, let alone enough hope to give to others by their very presence. There were times when we would go into communities that were resisting oppression, daily oppression, or daily anxieties about being pushed off of their lands. And when we would go and debrief them and talk about them, it was the people from the US that had the least hope around what they were doing. And these people from the US, they're not the ones, though, who are experiencing that displacement, who are not experiencing that anxiety. And yet there was less hope about the community's resistance from these people coming out of a different context. And I get it, you know, it's not like the US really has any stories of any victories. It's not like we share any successes in mainstream media. It's not like we see these little steps as victories. We always see them, I think, as things that can be taken away. Marriage equality was about to be taken away. Reproductive health was taken away. Like, there are things that are being taken away from us, even victories that we win that are taken away from us. We don't hear about the victories often. So I don't blame them that people from the US, you know, and we have this intentional news stream of hopelessness and overwhelm put upon us so that we don't have to do anything, or that we feel hopeless doing things, or that we are not going to make impact when we actually do things. So I continue to struggle with this idea and this language of hope, hearing it in the Philippines and hearing it here in this context in the US. So at some point while leading these trips to the Philippines and in getting more involved in movements for liberation, I found points where hope just didn't resonate. This idea of giving just didn't resonate. to me, at some point, a few years ago, hope was a synergy. It wasn't something that one person had and could give. It wasn't something that someone could even hold or possess. Hope was synergy that came with people being able to see one another, being able to live like one another. Hope became the ability to live into compassion or compassion to suffer with. It was the ability to be with someone, to identify with others. That's what I felt like it was a few years ago, meaning I was very convicted about this definition. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that life changes things. Hope can also oddly be something that some say when they actually want to distance themselves from being engaged, right? Just think of the many who find hope knowing that Pine exists and yet don't engage in our ministries or walk through our church doors. But they have hope, they love that we're here. Me personally, I've experienced this too, that the work I was doing as a queer, trans, Filipino pastor, justice-oriented, blah, 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 that what I was doing was giving people hope, knowing that there were people like me out there, gave people hope. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn or to brag, but I'm saying this because it puzzles me. Because when I would send these opportunities to these same people who said that my work gave them hope, it was hard for them to live into this hopeful framework, if that makes sense. I didn't see them more often. I didn't see them more deeply engaged. They just were hopeful that someone was doing something. Someone outside of themselves was doing something. That a community outside of themselves is doing something. This gives them hope, but there would be no engagement. I heard hope used as this big idea that puts it onto others to do the work of hope, while those who say the word hope kind of kick back and watch us hope bringers become tired. I've been in other spaces that have reminded me that hope, sometimes when it's gone, the reminder that hope can be a discipline, can be a practice, has been helpful. It's something that one commits to living into and to practicing. Sometimes it can come off as Pollyanna, but if we're practicing it more and more, sometimes we can share and have time and space to really bring in the depth of what hope can be, hope as a practice, hope as a discipline, especially when hope can't be found, to find it, to live into it anyway, to speak it anyway, to find others who might have more hopeful words than you might have at that time. You know, when I was in Atlanta last month in October. It's been that long. I went to an Evolving Faith conference. So it's a conference that's pretty ecumenical. Most of the folks who attend are people who are of the ex-evangelical folks or ex-evangelicals, I think some folks are saying now. People who might not be in church anymore, people who are struggling to reconcile what it is to be justice-oriented or more open, and yet how to reconcile that with the faith they were brought into. There were Episcopalians there, Presbyterians there. It was the most ecumenical space I had ever been in. Evolving Faith, check it out. You can watch my video on there if you join. Okay, so I had the privilege of being with the other speakers, right? So only the speakers and presenters and artists were invited to come in person and to record in person. Everyone else had to join online. And so there's this one theologian that was there, Miguel de la Torre. He's taught at PSR before. He's also currently a professor at ILIF, School of Theology. And he spoke about hopelessness. You know, he spoke about how hopelessness can sometimes open up the door to new ways of being and new ways of thinking. That sometimes it's not hope that moves us forward into action, that hopelessness, sometimes being desperate and seeing that no other ways work, hopelessness can be a doorway to something new as well. So perhaps hope is more complex and more rich than our current dominant society has language for, has stories for even. Like if you look at all the Christmas movies coming out today, they're probably gonna focus on hope and joy. Are they really gonna make you feel hopeful and joyful? I don't know, but it's a good distraction. So Maybe these stories, maybe how we talk about hope here in our society is limited. Maybe even the definitions and examples that we are shown are surface definitions that make us able to use the word hope in order to distance ourselves from action. It allows us to feel good for a moment, but then we don't have to do anything after that. But hope in the context of Jesus's life and ministry was never simply about making people hopeful for the sake of people being hopeful. Jesus's life of ministry was never about that, but was about moving people to resist all the ideas and values the oppressive systems of empire impose onto them every day and every moment. Jesus's hope was never just an idea for the sake of the idea, was never for kind thoughts, was never about extending graciousness to those who take that grace for granted or take advantage of grace so that they can continue the way of empire and be comfortable in empire. Jesus's hope was always about living into something, right relationships with others, right relationships with self, with God, with creation, in ways that did not ignore the cries of the prophets and the calls of the poor. The hope that we anticipate with the incarnate Christ, with the Christ in flesh, is an embodied hope. It is alive. It has a heartbeat. It has a rhythm. It breathes, it moves, it walks, it grows, it rests. It takes time for itself. It takes time to connect. It changes systems. It provokes the heart and spirit. It is a hope in the new creation. It is a hope in the end of suffering. It is a hope in revolution. It is a hope that hopes we will be active participants, speaking hope with our lives, not with just our words, but with our brokenheartedness for the wounded, with our yearning for justice, and not with platitudes, but with service of God through service of the people. This hope that we're talking about with Jesus, always talking about the end of things, is a hopeful message. It's about new ways of being. Hope or hopelessness might be the path to get to that place, but ultimately it's about that place we're all trying to get to, this place of liberation, this place of peace, this place of healing. This is the hope that we're called into when we're talking about housing the holy. How can we make space for hope and hopelessness that guides us towards action, that guides us towards genuine love, that guides us to a just peace? I hope that throughout the season, we'll continue on looking at these values, hope, peace, joy, and love. And I hope that we can delve into them so that we can, actually benefit from the richness of what these ideas mean in the context of our oppressive society. And so I invite you all to take this time to hold in your spirits any insights, the conversations that came up, the things that come up for you in this time, and we'll take these things into our time of prayer, and we will open up with our new song of prayer, Make of My Heart a Stable.